Good evening, welcome back. Thanks for sticking with us. I chose the following three poems according to a theme that I brought up earlier. And I hope that it will kind of arise by the end of my reading, so I'm just going to get to it because I'm not great at banter. You have Timothy coming, so you'll be satiated. In memory of my feelings, Frank O'Hara. She could find reason anywhere if she looked for it. The clock told her to get up. She got up. She ate. The plot is the one thing we know, said Mendelstam. Irritation gave way to something else. The mind as a well-organized cabinet where a spoon and a fork were looking out of place. Reason wasn't the hinge on which memory swung. A truism escapes its cage. A bark brings you back to it. You are who you are, the self said, to the self who did not know what it wanted. The knave was another kind of person, mean. He had winter in his heart. She could find meaning in the metaphor of a missing knife. She was cold. She reached for her coat. I've never seen anyone like you. The truism was true. That will do. There was that day made of clay, and there's each piece of tile that makes an entire, clear, supple or there. How many selves? He asks at the counter. I'll take a dozen. Wrapped and sent somewhere. Someone serves up a plate of devils. Another eats them wearing a red dress and a black beanie. The pendulum swings and in doing so makes a pattern. Each is only one. The serpent in the middle is that vituperative viper, his spittle hung from its fangs. To be true blue is something else. The rule breaks, the paint drips. We are all human. We are all fork and spoon on a string around our neck. Let me through. There's some pushing aside by the diva. In the memory of the single clear moment, time defined, the glint of silver on a spoon. Which one of your many selves is looking into that mirror? One, all, one and all, the little dragons at the door. Someone reaches out and a pair of scissors says, snip. There go the threads that hold us together. Someone serves up a witchy brew when someone doesn't say, I'm sorry. Someone says, ready. Someone slices off a life with a missing knife. That is from the I Like a Strange Balloon. Under the influence of ideals, from the last 2 seconds. The extra fine ingredients sift down on you or stir at your feet and cover your shoes with dust. The back of your hands dusted. Some fine glass particles stick. The long bath only removes the thin layer that can be removed. Everything else is taken in and kept. You stand up when you can to the curled lip, some dog face raking back the curtain to expose the starving. Who isn't on edge? Always the look that doesn't, that says don't. And then the strategic repetition of the threat. Death in the performance background, some long past allegory in back. Zero plays on low while you look back over your shoulder into a three-way mirror, look up. There's the glass chandelier that substitutes for a people on the edge of their seats. The natural birthright position. Every last scene lasts for no more than a second. Some ceramic panther stands in for the extinct. Is it today yet? On stage, in a moment of everyday realism, an accordion folds and unfolds while we pretend, we forget, we said we'd be kind. And this last poem is Master's Houses from A Doll for Throwing. Architectural is one way of being, a background against which the black trees are more belonging than the white walls and made beds of boredom behind them. Inside, a plate is waiting to be emptied, a rose is giving in. I never wanted to be anything but an eye that was open, city to city to city. Master is craftsman, but also a brutal building of history. bleached femurs in slave chains and trains to where razor wire master as monster the memory of. We begin where you begin, with the thought that the world was about to be, and it was, and still is. Thank you. This is such a metallic microphone. Hi, I just want to begin by saying that it is an incredibly difficult effort for me to have to say something smart about the person who I come to say smart things. I remember being told how incredibly sincerely intellectual and intense Mary Jo Bang was before I even got here. And I remember one of the first books by Mary Jo that I started reading in undergrad was The Eye Like a Strange Balloon. So imagine that, I am this young poet that's just coming off of, I don't know, Ginsberg. And then suddenly I arrive at this poet who can carry this sentence in such a precise way and be so intentful about the diction and also just to, have this investment in knowing the texture of the mind. I could not handle it. So I just put it down. I was like, I'll come back. But I appreciate so much everything that each of you has said. Cassie, that was incredibly beautiful, and it brought up so many emotions for me, especially even down to the pizza. I love that pizza, by the way. It's a very good curatorial project, that pizza. But just all of the sensations that come with knowing Mary Jo and being around Mary Jo and being in Mary Jo's space, the mind just kind of reels and is allowed to reel. That's the generosity of Mary Jo, as we've said. Though I wrote a little thing, but I just wanted to say, I appreciate each of you, Aaron, getting us to think about also those times in workshop and the things that we took from workshop. I still arrive as the leader of a workshop, and the poem is read, and I say, okay, now what do we make of this? I just so many, I think, kind of beautiful conventions that Mary Jo has, and her poise, the things that you don't even know that you have in Mary Jo that have really been a mark on each of us. So thank you, Joel and Stephanie, Sarah here, and Miranda and all of Special Collections for the work that you've done on Mary Jo's papers. I'm gonna try to keep this a little brief because I know we still have to hear from Mary Jo and then also do the reading. But I tried to reflect a bit on the time that I worked here at Special Collections on the papers and on Mary Jo's manuscript papers with her. Looking back, I think I used to revise my poems a bit haphazardly. When I wished to edit a draft, I would simply open the digital file, make changes to diction or syntax or punctuation or order without tracking those changes, God forbid, save the same file without preserving the original draft, and close it. I would click and clack away, drag a few spaces with a few backspace taps, Control-Z entries, and then be done. Yeah, sure, I mostly maintained initial handwritten drafts in a journal that I'd eventually leave on the bookshelf and rarely, if ever, return to. My body had minimal investment in this process. I had yet to encounter Mary Jo Bang's manuscript papers, had not sorted through the boxes and stacks of them with post-it notes clinging to my fingertips, or arranged the poems that would become a doll for throwing alphabetically and by revision stage across her long dining room table, completely obscuring its surface and the cushions of a few chairs, a scene in which the body and the text must negotiate for space. It was one thing to spend a summer here in Special Collections reading the colorful letters of James Merrill with all their strange and gorgeous sketches of faces, cobbling together my own Merrill mythology while scanning the photos of his sharp young face and prescribing data entry shorthand to his thrilling journey of lovers and scattered friends and personal loss. I steadily unfolded those yellow and cracked pages as the people who wrote them unfolded before me, while carefully confining my new fingerprints to their corners. I had known so little of this crucial tactile exchange of handling correspondences, the ways of being known that had been handled some 50, some 80 years previously, the time it was slowing, warping. I felt a thrill then, learning that I'd get to work with Mary Jo on the Mary Jo Bang papers, not the least for the opportunity to better know Mary Jo as an artist and a student in her own right. Here were the proofs of a writer's life still lived. And that marginalia I've come to love, where I've seen it next to my own drafts. While labeling the first folders for the Apology for Want manuscript drafts, I noted the sheer number of drafts. How many for this poem as opposed to this poem? Wondering, did Mary Jo know that this poem would make it? What was behind the discontent with this 5-time revised line? Why do only 2 drafts remain for this one? These date stamps. Mary Jo devoted 4 years to wrestling with this poem? I was so young 3 years ago, y'all, forgive me. I know now that I was being introduced in earnest to a determination to exist with the work, to watch it grow as the life grows. The life being inseparable from the work, as Ellen Bryant Voigt reminds me. But more so, here were the glimpses of the particulars of Mary Jo, whose life has included the tactile and visual artistic practices of photography and sculpture, someone who collects not just the momentous miniature tabletop objects that I can never help asking about, but who also collects her narratives in them, who welcomes into her poems the lives of innumerable other artists, whose back matter notes are practically curated exhibitions, biographies, and encyclopedia sections in themselves. Of course, this person, this plurality, this superior tableau of idiosyncrasies would keep extensive notes, argue with herself, reconsider that maybe that thing she said that one time was one right way to say it, and think to include in the next line another way to say it, polyglot that she is. Later, as I sidestep a folder of printed Dante research and bent my shoulders over the drafts of the then forthcoming A Doll for Throwing, while Mary Jo worked in her office on one of 3 concurrent projects, I thought again about the poetic tenacity I favor most in Mary Jo's work, her ability to succinctly render aesthetics of the interior. Yes, I mean the steel cabinet and the clock and the sound of yeah, yeah, yes playing. Yes, I mean a room inside the day in which the self finds these tangible matters bidding for protagonism. Yes, I mean the minefield of risky curiosity that is each capsule of memory, the road the right slant of sun can take through a lurking window to explode open the whole mansion of obsession long awaiting its moment to take hold. And after the elemental collision of the so-called abstract, the mind and the mood, the self and the sound, no moment of the fallout from this is mere suggestion, is simply like or as though. When I read Mary Jo's poetry, I'm made to contend with presence and being, the actions of figures and figurines grave and silly, rarely one more trivial or tremendous than another in their equal synaptic pinch. Of course, hers are poems of continuous opening and apprenticeship. Of course, hers are drafts of living spaces to be necessarily rearranged and revisualized. I know better now. I put my hand in my poems, my pencil through my most adored display of words. There is an elsewhere here among the first images my solitude lends me, a self in every room. I put on my boots. I have the old key, and I pull its nickel taste from my mouth. Mary Jo taught me to turn it. I was wondering, Joel, if I could still read, because I wanted to read a small poem that kind of Mary Jo influenced. Is that all right? We got 10? Okay. This poem is titled The Hang Up. The gun was away on business, and throughout the apartment, I closed the doors, kept the quiet in, imitated a table, and ended the gossip of so many saucers against little spoons. I was a coat rack in the long hall leading off the cliff of my world. I modeled for the day my man would blow in. Each Sunday, when the boot of news hit the stoop, I pinched the red belt through the jacket's each whispering loop, pinched my figure as I had the napkins in their rings every other week into ready for the taking poses. Pinky finger and a clutch, a fist of gloves, shoulder waist isosceles like a Dutch chocolate slice, take me. Waiting had also promised to end me, but daily and starting with the innermost parts. To keep the clock's hands folded, I drank from the bottles with the heaviest necks. I slept over calls from the assorted gentlemen, university debt, universal surveillance, the usually cruel cruelties, all of whom knew how hot the pockets of my husband the gun, but I was housebound and a centerpiece. My needful plastic apple heart rattled alone in the bowl. Blood was a good boyfriend. He did me the cold weather kindness. He cuddled in the scoops of my cuticles. Slow to evade, he let me say things mostly to myself, such as rougher, and stiffened in the bracket of a headboard as if this were what listening looked like. Then ennui returned, hotter showers, tighter sonnets on which to practice arguments, their quick mustard dashes Dickinsoning the cream blue steam into bite-sized compartments. While plotting digressions, my tongue melodied some alarm code lost to me now on the backs of my teeth, on the old metal fillings, tiny notes of copper and toxin, the gun. That man couldn't quit my mouth, the gun. That man came in with his business end. The big door let his pleasure through. And I wanted to read that because the other night, someone asked me about this poem and, what does it mean? And I said, actually, I don't want to tell you that I don't actually know what it means. I just know that it was a feeling. It was a kind of a landscape that I had to map. It was something that I had to say the texture of. It is a paranoia that I know that I could put a language to because Mary Jo taught me to do it. So thank you.